I was 8 years old when I learned that some kids get taken care of and others learn to take care of themselves. Picture this. Sunday morning, our house smelled like pancakes and coffee. I'm standing on a step stool in the laundry room trying to figure out how much detergent goes in the washing machine. Meanwhile, my little brother Jasper is in the kitchen having an allergy attack. Nothing serious, just his usual spring sniffles. But mom's there with tissues and her worried voice making sure he's comfortable. Nobody taught me how to do laundry. I just figured it out because my school clothes weren't going to wash themselves. By the time I was 10, I was packing my own lunches. Peanut butter and jelly and apple. Maybe some crackers if we had them. Jasper got the good stuff, the Lunchables and juice boxes, because he was sensitive and needed foods that wouldn't trigger his stomach issues. I want to be clear about something. I wasn't bitter about this. This was just how things were. Jasper needed more attention, and I was the capable one, the responsible one, the one who could handle things. That became my identity. Lena handles it. Fast forward to college graduation. I'm 22, landing my first real job at a tech startup in Austin. The salary wasn't huge, but it felt like winning the lottery after 4 years of ramen noodles and textbook debt. 3 months in, I got my first bonus, $1,500. I was so excited. I had plans, maybe a weekend trip somewhere or finally buying a couch that wasn't from Craigslist. That's when Mom called. "Lena, honey, I hate to ask, but Jasper's car insurance went up again. Something about his anxiety medication affecting his rates. Could you maybe help us out this month, just until he gets back on his feet?" Jasper was 20 at the time. He'd dropped out of community college twice because it was too stressful. He was living at home working part-time at a coffee shop when his anxiety allowed it. And I said yes. Of course I said yes. That's what I always did. It started with car insurance. Then it was his therapy copays because our family plan didn't cover mental health very well. Then it was helping with his portion of the cell phone bill. Nothing huge, nothing dramatic. Just Lena handling it like always. By the time Jasper turned 25, I'd probably spent close to $20,000 keeping his life together. Not that anyone was counting. Definitely not that anyone was saying thank you. But here's the thing that really gets me. Jasper wasn't incapable. He was just protected from ever having to be capable. There's a difference. I watched him charm his way out of responsibilities his whole life. Anxiety attack before a job interview, asthma flare-up during finals week, panic attack when it was time to move out of mom and dad's house. And everyone just accepted it. Poor Jasper, he's so sensitive. Poor Jasper, he needs more time. Poor Jasper, he's just not ready yet. Meanwhile, I was ready for everything. Ready to work overtime. Ready to cover his bills. Ready to be the backup plan for a family that never quite saw me as someone who might need a backup plan too. So, when Jasper called me last spring, voice shaking with excitement, I knew something big was coming. "Lena, I need to tell you something. I proposed to Tess. She said yes. We're getting married." The silence on my end must have lasted too long because he jumped in with, "Aren't you excited? Aren't you happy for me?" And I was. I really was happy for him. Jasper deserved love. He deserved someone who saw the good in him, someone who could help him become the person he was supposed to be. But there was something else. Something I couldn't quite name at first. I'd met Tess a few times. She was beautiful, confident, always perfectly dressed. She had this way of talking about her life like it was a movie she was starring in. Everything was amazing or incredible or absolutely perfect. When Jasper talked about her, his whole face lit up. But when she talked about him, there was something in her eyes that didn't quite match her words. Maybe I was being paranoid. Maybe I was just protective because I'd been taking care of Jasper for so long. Maybe I was jealous that someone else was going to be the most important person in his life. But sitting there on the phone, listening to him talk about wedding plans and how Tess had already started looking at venues, I felt this weird knot in my stomach. Something about this didn't feel right. And unfortunately, my instincts about people, They're usually pretty accurate. 2 weeks after the engagement announcement, my phone rang at 7 in the morning. It was Tess, and she was practically vibrating with excitement. Lena! Oh my god, I'm so glad you picked up. I have been up all night looking at venues, and I am literally dying. This wedding is going to be absolutely incredible. I'm barely awake still in my pajamas, but Tess is talking a mile a minute about flower arrangements and color schemes, and something called a champagne wall that apparently costs $3,000. The thing is, she continues, Jasper is just not good with logistics. You know how he gets overwhelmed with details. But you're so organized, so smart about this stuff. Would you mind helping me coordinate some things? And there it was. The ask. Wrapped up in compliments, but still an ask. What kind of help are we talking about? I asked, trying to sound casual. Well, I found this amazing venue. It's a resort in Austin right on the lake. The pictures are gorgeous. But they need a deposit to hold the date, and Jasper's been having some anxiety about the money stuff. I should have said no right then. I should have told her that wedding planning was something she and Jasper needed to figure out together. But, what I heard in her voice. The same thing I'd been hearing in my family's voices my whole life. That assumption that Lena would handle it. How much are we talking about? I asked. Just $5,000 for the venue deposit, and maybe another $2,000 for the floral consultation. They need to book vendors early for September weddings. $7,000. Just like that, thrown out like it was pocket change. But here's what got me. Tess made it sound like I was doing her this huge favor, like I was the wedding fairy godmother swooping in to make dreams come true. You're just so good at this, she said. I wish I had your brain for numbers and organization. Jasper is so lucky to have a sister like you. So I said yes. Of course. I said yes. Over the next month, I found myself booking vendors, wiring deposits, and basically becoming the unofficial wedding coordinator for an event I wasn't even sure I wanted to attend. The venue deposit turned into catering deposits. The floral consultation turned into a full floral package. Every conversation with Tess ended with her finding one more essential thing that needed immediate payment. The photographer I want is booking up fast. She needs a retainer today, or we'll lose her. The dress I fell in love with is from this boutique in London. They need payment up front for international orders. The band everyone's talking about just had a cancellation for our date, but they need confirmation by tonight. Every time I told myself this was the last expense. Every time Tess made it sound like I was saving the entire wedding. And every time she mentioned how the groom's family would pitch in once everything was finalized. Spoiler alert, they never did. By July, I'd paid for the venue, the catering deposit, the flowers, the photographer, the dress, the band, and something called ambient lighting that cost more than my monthly rent. I was in for about $45,000, but who's counting, right? That's when Tess introduced me to her maid of honor. Lena, I want you to meet Becca. She's my absolute best friend, and she's going to be my maid of honor. Becca, this is Jasper's sister, the one I was telling you about. Becca looked me up and down like she was evaluating a piece of furniture she wasn't sure she wanted in her house. She was one of those Instagram-perfect women who looked like she'd never had a bad photo taken in her life. Oh, she said, extending her hand like she expected me to kiss it. You're the one handling all the vendor stuff. Not, nice to meet you. Not, thank you for everything you're doing. Just acknowledgement that I was the person taking care of logistics. Becca has 300,000 followers, Tess gushed. She's a lifestyle influencer. She's actually going to feature our wedding on her platform. Isn't that amazing? And suddenly, pieces started clicking into place. Becca started talking about the wedding like it was a business opportunity. We'll need to make sure all the vendors understand this is a high-profile event. The photographer needs to provide high-resolution images for social media. The venue should be prepared for professional lighting setups. I'm standing there realizing that this isn't just a wedding. This is content. This is a brand collaboration disguised as a celebration of love. Tess, I said carefully, are you planning to monetize the wedding? She laughed like I'd asked the most ridiculous question in the world. Oh, Lena, you're so practical. This isn't about money. This is about sharing our love story with the world. But Becca was already talking about sponsorship opportunities and how much engagement wedding content typically generates. I watched Tess's eyes light up as they discussed aesthetic consistency and brand alignment and something called authentic storytelling opportunities. My brother's wedding had become a marketing campaign, and I was the one funding it, standing there in that overpriced brunch spot, listening to two women discuss my family. Like we were props in their content creation strategy, I felt something shift inside me. This wasn't about Jasper finding love. This wasn't about celebrating a new chapter in his life. This was about Tess building her personal brand, and she'd found the perfect funding source. A family that had been trained for 25 years to say yes whenever someone needed financial help. The worst part, I don't think Jasper had any idea what was really happening. 2 weeks before the wedding, I got an email from the wedding planner. Just a routine update about final headcounts and seating arrangements. I opened it while drinking my morning coffee, expecting to see details about table assignments or maybe last-minute menu changes. Instead, I found myself staring at a guest list. 127 names alphabetically organized with dietary restrictions and +1 information. I scrolled through it once, then again, then a third time, thinking maybe I was missing something. My name wasn't on it. Not under L for Lena, not under my last name, not anywhere. I sat there for a full 5 minutes just staring at my laptop screen. The coffee got cold in my hands. I kept thinking there had to be a mistake. Maybe there were multiple lists. Maybe this was just the vendor list or the +1 list or something. But no. This was labeled Final Guest List, Jasper and Tess Wedding, September 23rd. And I wasn't on it. I called Tess immediately. My hands were actually shaking as I dialed. Lena, hi, what's up? I just got an email from the wedding planner, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. There seems to be some kind of mistake with the guest list. Silence. Then a sigh. Oh, that. I was meaning to talk to you about that. Talk to me about what exactly... Look, it's nothing personal. We just had to make some really tough decisions about the guest list. The venue has capacity limits, and we're trying to create a specific vibe. A specific vibe. I just spent $87,000 on this woman's specific vibe. What kind of vibe doesn't include the groom's sister? I asked. Well, that's the thing. We're going for more of a social chic atmosphere. You know, more contemporary, more curated, less family reunion, more celebration of love. I actually laughed. Not because anything was funny, but because the alternative was screaming. Tess, I've paid for this entire wedding. I've coordinated vendors. I've wired deposits. I've been planning this thing for months. And we're so grateful for that. But you have to understand, this day isn't really about family logistics. It's about Jasper and me starting our new life together. And the energy we want is just different. Energy. She was talking about energy while disinviting me from an event I'd funded. Can I talk to Jasper? I asked. He's not here right now. Then have him call me. Lena, please don't make this harder than it has to be. This isn't about you. But it was about me. It was entirely about me. I was the person who had made this wedding possible, and now I was too much of a family reunion vibe to actually attend. I hung up and immediately called Jasper. Straight to voicemail. I called again. Voicemail! I texted him, "We need to talk. Now." 3 hours later, he texted back, "Can't talk right now, wedding stress. We'll call you later." He never called. So I called my mom. "Oh, sweetie," she said when I explained what happened. "I'm sure there's been some kind of misunderstanding." "Mom, there's no misunderstanding. They don't want me at the wedding." "Well, maybe you're overreacting a little bit. You know how you get when you're stressed." How I get when I'm stressed. Like, this was my personality flaw, not a reasonable response to being excluded from my own brother's wedding. "Mom, I've spent almost $90,000 on this wedding." And that was very generous of you. But maybe Tess has a point about keeping things simple. You know how overwhelming big family events can be. Overwhelming. I was overwhelming. You're always so logical, sweetie, she continued. I'm sure if you think about it rationally, you'll understand why they made this choice. I hung up on my own mother. That night, I did something I probably should have done months earlier. I sat down with my laptop and opened a spreadsheet. Venue deposit 12,000, catering 28,000, photography 8,000, flowers 11,000, dress 6,000, band 9,000, lighting 4,000, miscellaneous deposits and fees 9,300. Total $87,300. All of it from my savings account. All of it for a wedding I was apparently too family reunion to attend. I'd received exactly 0 thank you notes, 0 acknowledgements, 0 recognition that I'd funded this entire production. And then I saw Becca's Instagram story. It was a photo of what looked like a wedding planning session. Tess and Becca sitting at a coffee shop surrounded by fabric samples and vendor portfolios. The caption read, "Cut the chaos, keep the aesthetic. Cut the chaos." I was the chaos, apparently. That's when I did something I should have thought of weeks ago. I opened my filing cabinet and pulled out every single contract I'd signed for this wedding. Venue contract, catering contract, photography contract, floral contract. All of them with my name as the primary contact. All of them with my credit card on file. All of them with my signature authorizing payment. And then I found something interesting in the venue contract. Clause 10.3. Cancellation rights held by financial sponsor. In the event that the party responsible for payment wishes to cancel contracted services, refund policies apply according to the timeline specified in Section 4. Financial sponsor. That was me? I opened the catering contract. Same clause, almost word for word. Photography contract. Floral contract. Band contract. Every single vendor had the same clause buried in their terms and conditions. As the person who had paid for everything, I had the legal right to cancel everything. I sat there in my living room, surrounded by contracts and invoices, and I realized something that probably should have been obvious from the beginning. This wasn't Jasper and Tess's wedding. This was my wedding. I'd just been planning it for other people. And if I wasn't invited to my own wedding, well, maybe there shouldn't be a wedding at all. I didn't sleep that night. I sat at my kitchen table with my laptop open and a legal pad covered in notes, and I made a list. By 6 a.m., I knew exactly what I was going to do. I started with the venue. Hi, this is Lena Martinez calling about the Jasper and Tess wedding on September 23rd. I need to cancel the booking. Oh no, the event coordinator said. I'm so sorry to hear that. Is everything okay? Did something happen? I just need to cancel. What's the process? Well, according to our records, you're the primary contact and financial sponsor, so you do have cancellation rights. But can I ask what's going on? We've been working on this event for months. I could have explained. I could have told her the whole story about being uninvited to my own brother's wedding. But you know what? I didn't owe anyone an explanation. I'm exercising my cancellation rights as outlined in Clause 10.3 of the contract. What's my refund amount? She put me on hold for 10 minutes, probably calling supervisors and trying to figure out what to do. When she came back, she sounded confused but professional. According to our cancellation policy, you'll receive a 70% refund. That comes to $8,400. I'll need written confirmation to process this. You'll have it within the hour. Next call catering. Same conversation, same confusion, same outcome. They could refund 60% since it was less than 2 weeks out. Still, that was almost $17,000 back in my account. The photography studio was actually relieved. Apparently, destination wedding photographers get cancellations all the time and they already had someone interested in the date. Full refund minus a $500 processing fee. The custom dress from London was trickier. Since it was already made and shipped, they could only offer a 30% refund. But 30% of $6,000 was still $1,800 more than I'd have if I let this wedding happen. By noon, I'd canceled everything. Venue, catering, photography, flowers, band lighting, even the champagne wall that had cost $3,000. My phone started ringing around 2 p.m. First call was from the wedding planner, completely panicked. Lena, I'm getting cancellation notices from all the vendors. What's happening? Is there a family emergency? No emergency. I'm just exercising my contractual rights. But the wedding is in 12 days. Tess and Jasper don't know anything about this. They'll figure it out. Second call was from Tess and she was screaming. What the hell do you think you're doing? You can't just cancel my wedding. Actually, I can. I paid for it. This is insane. You're having some kind of breakdown. This isn't your decision to make. You're right, I said. It's not my decision. It's my money. I hung up on her too. The calls kept coming. Jasper crying and confused. My dad trying to play peacemaker. Cousins I hadn't heard from in years suddenly very concerned about family unity. But the call that really got to me was from my mom. Lena, people are saying you've lost your mind. They're saying you're bitter and jealous and trying to ruin Jasper's happiness. You need help, sweetie. This isn't normal behavior. Normal behavior. Apparently, spending $90,000 on other people's dreams was normal. Setting boundaries was what needed professional intervention. Mom, I was uninvited to the wedding I paid for. What part of my response seems unreasonable to you? But you're always so logical. This seems so emotional. There it was again. The assumption that being logical meant being a doormat, that having emotions about being treated poorly was somehow a character flaw. I hung up on her too. That night, I did something I'd never done before. I sent a group email to every vendor, every family member, and every friend who'd been asking questions. There has been some confusion about recent cancellations related to the September 23rd wedding. I want to clarify there was no breakdown. There was no emergency. There was no mental health crisis. There was a boundary. When someone funds an entire event and is then told they're not welcome to attend because they don't fit the aesthetic, that's not a family problem. That's a business transaction. And as the person who paid for services, I have every right to cancel those services. I wish Jasper and Tess well in whatever alternative arrangements they choose to make. I felt better after sending that email than I had in months. The vendors stopped calling after that. Most of them actually seemed relieved to have a clear explanation. A few even thanked me for being professional about the whole thing. But the drama wasn't over. 2 days later, I got a text from my friend Sarah, who works in marketing and follows a bunch of lifestyle influencers. Lena, you need to see this. She sent me a screenshot of an email from Tess to the editor of some bridal magazine called Modern Bride. Hi Jennifer, I hope you remember me from the Austin Fashion Week after party. I wanted to follow up on your suggestion about featuring real weddings in your magazine. My wedding next month is going to be absolutely stunning, and I think it would be perfect for your fall issue. The budget is significant, so the production value will be magazine quality. My maid of honor is Becca Chen. She has 300K followers and amazing engagement rates. I think this could be a great partnership for both of us. Let me know if you're interested in seeing some preview shots. She was trying to monetize my wedding. She was literally attempting to sell the rights to an event I had paid for to a magazine, probably for thousands of dollars. I screenshot that email and saved it to a folder on my desktop labeled Evidence. Because suddenly, this wasn't just about being uninvited to a family event. This was about someone trying to profit off my money while excluding me from the very thing I had made possible. And that's when I realized I'd made the right choice. When I added up all the refunds, I recovered about $41,000. The other $46,000 was gone forever, but you know what? I decided to think of that as tuition. Tuition for learning what my family really thought of me. Tuition for understanding how some people view generosity as stupidity. Tuition for discovering that there's a difference between being needed and being valued. It was expensive education, but it was worth every penny. 3 months later, I was at a tech conference in Austin. I wasn't looking for anyone from my family. Honestly, I'd been enjoying the peace and quiet of not having to manage anyone else's crisis for the first time in my adult life. I was walking out of a session on artificial intelligence in healthcare when I saw him. Jasper was sitting alone at a coffee cart, hunched over his phone. He looked like he'd lost 20 pounds and not in a good way. His hair was longer than I'd ever seen it, kind of messy, and he was wearing a wrinkled button-down shirt that looked like it had been slept in. For a second, I thought about just walking past him. We hadn't spoken since the day I canceled the wedding, and honestly, I wasn't sure I was ready for whatever conversation this was going to be. But something about the way he was sitting there so small and defeated made me stop. Jasper, he looked up, and I could see that his eyes were red-rimmed and tired. When he saw me, his whole face just crumpled. Lena, oh God, Lena. I sat down across from him, not sure what to expect. You look terrible, I said, which probably wasn't the most sisterly thing to say, but it was true. He laughed, but it came out more like a sob. Yeah, I feel terrible. What are you doing here? I thought you didn't like big crowds. I got a job, he said. Junior developer at a startup downtown. They sent me to learn about new frameworks. It's not much, but it's honest work. Honest work. That was a phrase I'd never heard Jasper use before. That's good, I said. I'm proud of you. He looked at me like I just told him I was moving to Mars. You're proud of me, after everything that happened. I didn't answer right away. I was still processing the fact that my brother, who'd spent the last 5 years avoiding any kind of responsibility, was voluntarily attending professional development conferences. Jasper, what happened? After the wedding got canceled, I mean. He was quiet for a long time. When he finally spoke, his voice was barely above a whisper. We did it anyway. Got married at the courthouse the next week. Just Tess, me, Becca, and a witness they pulled in from the hallway. And Tess was furious about the cancellation. She blamed me for not controlling you. Said I was weak for letting my sister ruin the most important day of her life. I felt a flare of anger, but I didn't say anything. She moved in with me after the courthouse thing. Said we needed to focus on building our brand together. She had all these plans for turning our relationship into content. Daily Instagram stories, couples workout videos, sponsored date nights. That sounds exhausting. It was, but I thought that was just what marriage was like. I thought I was lucky to have someone so ambitious and driven. He paused, staring down at his coffee. Then she found out about my credit limit. I had a feeling I knew where this was going. She said we needed to invest in her business, that her and Becca had this amazing opportunity to start a mindfulness retreat for influencers in LA. She just needed some startup capital. How much startup capital? $23,000. Everything on my credit card plus some. I felt sick, and you gave it to her. I didn't give it to her. She took it. I came home from work one day, and she was packing. Said the retreat was launching immediately, and she couldn't wait around for me to find my courage and move to LA with her. She left? She left. Took Becca. Took my credit card. Took the car I'd been making payments on. Left me a note saying she'd send me information about the retreat once it was established, and maybe I could visit sometime if I ever leveled up enough to fit into her world. I sat there for a minute, trying to process this. That was 7 weeks ago, he continued. Haven't heard from her since. The credit card company calls me every day. I'm working overtime just to make minimum payments. The anger I felt toward Tess was overwhelming, but it was mixed with something else. Something that felt dangerously close to "I told you so." Jasper, I said carefully, when I was planning that wedding, when I was spending all that money, did you ever wonder where it was coming from? He looked at me with something that might have been shame. I knew it was you. I always knew it was you. Then why didn't you stop it? Because I was terrified of losing her. I thought if I couldn't give her the wedding she wanted, she'd leave me. So when you offered to help, I let you. And when she said you were too much drama for the actual day, I let that happen too. You let it happen. I didn't want to lose her, Lena. I was so afraid of being alone that I let her cut you out of something you'd paid for. I let her treat you like an employee instead of my sister. He was crying now, and I'd never seen my brother cry before. Not even when we were kids. I didn't stop her because I didn't want to lose her, he said, and I lost you instead. Those words hit me like a physical blow, because that was exactly what had happened. In trying to keep Tess happy, he'd lost the one person who'd always been there for him. And you know what the worst part is, he continued. You tried to warn me. You tried to tell me something was off about her, and I told everyone you were jealous. I let Mom say you were being emotional and dramatic, when really you were the only one seeing clearly. I sat there looking at my little brother, this man I'd spent my whole life taking care of, and for the first time in our relationship, he looked like he understood the weight of what had happened. I'm sorry, Lena. I'm so sorry. Not just for the wedding, but for everything. For letting you carry me financially for years. For never saying thank you. For taking your help for granted and then letting someone else exclude you from your own generosity. It was the first time in my entire life that Jasper had apologized to me without being prompted. No parent standing behind him telling him what to say. No girlfriend coaching him through an apology. Just him recognizing that he'd hurt me and taking responsibility for it. I didn't cry. But I felt something shift inside me. Something that had been tightly wound for months finally loosened. Thank you, I said. I needed to hear that. We sat there in silence for a while, watching people walk by with their conference badges and coffee cups. So what happens now? He asked. Now you figure out how to be an adult, I said. Without me, without Tess, without anyone else funding your life or making your decisions. He nodded. I think I'm starting to get the hang of it. It's scary, but it's better than being dependent on people who might disappear. Yeah, I said. It is better. After that conversation with Jasper, I did something I'd never done before. I started taking care of myself the way I'd been taking care of everyone else. The first thing I did was find a therapist, not because anyone told me I needed help, but because I wanted to understand why I'd spent my entire adult life funding other people's dreams while neglecting my own. Dr. Kim was a woman in her 50s who specialized in family dynamics and boundary setting. In our first session, she asked me a question that stopped me cold. Lena, when was the last time someone asked what you wanted and then actually listened to the answer? I sat there for a full minute, trying to remember. I couldn't. Over the next few months, I learned words for things I'd been experiencing my whole life. Parentification, emotional labor, financial exploitation, conditional love. I learned that being the strong one in a family often means being the invisible one. That being reliable doesn't make you valued, it makes you expected. I also joined a mentorship circle for women in leadership positions. 12 women who met once a month to talk about career development, personal growth, and supporting each other's ambitions. For the first time in my life, I was in a room where everyone was capable of handling their own problems, where asking for advice didn't mean being asked to solve someone else's crisis in return. These women talked about setting boundaries, like it was a normal, healthy thing to do. They talked about investing in themselves, about saying no to demands on their time and energy, about choosing relationships that added value to their lives instead of just taking from them. I changed my phone number. It sounds dramatic, but it was actually incredibly freeing. For the first time in years, my phone wasn't constantly buzzing with requests for money time or emotional support from family members who had never offered the same to me. My mom tried to reach me through the work email for a while. The messages were always the same theme. Lena, this has gone on long enough. Family is family. You can't just cut people off when they disappoint you. Jasper is going through a hard time and he needs his sister. I don't understand why you're being so stubborn about this. I read every email, but I didn't respond to any of them. Not because I was angry, but because I finally understood that my mom's definition of family was me giving endlessly while everyone else took without question. 6 months after the tech conference, I got a letter. An actual handwritten letter delivered to my work address. Lena, I know you probably don't want to hear from me, but I wanted you to know what's been happening. I've started over with nothing, just like you did when you were 18 and went to college without any help. It's scary, but it's also the first time in my life that I felt like I'm actually living instead of just being carried along by other people's decisions. The letter was 3 pages long. He told me about his job at a bookstore near downtown Austin, about the community college classes he was taking at night to get his associate degree, about how he was learning to cook for himself and manage his own money and handle problems without calling anyone for help. I don't know if you'll ever want a relationship with me again, he wrote. I know I don't deserve forgiveness just because I finally figured out how to be a decent person, but I wanted you to know that losing you taught me something that no one else ever did. It taught me that love isn't about how much someone will tolerate from you. It's about becoming someone worth loving. At the bottom of the letter, he'd written his new phone number and an address. If you ever want to talk, I'm here, but only if you want to. I'm done asking people to save me from my own choices. I kept that letter for 2 weeks before I decided what to do with it. I called him. We met at a coffee shop near the bookstore where he worked. When I walked in, I almost didn't recognize him. He was thinner, but in a healthy way. His hair was cut short and neat. He was wearing a simple sweater and jeans that actually fit properly. But the biggest difference was in his eyes. He looked present, alert, like he was actually inhabiting his own life instead of just floating through it. You look good, I said as I sat down. I feel good. Different, but good. We talked for 2 hours. He told me about his classes, about the customers at the bookstore, about how strange it felt to pay his own bills and make his own decisions. He didn't ask me for anything. Not money, not advice, not emotional support. He just talked to me like I was a person he wanted to know, not a resource he needed to access. Are you dating anyone? I asked. He shook his head. I figure I should probably learn how to be alone before I try being with someone else. Turns out I don't actually know who I am when I'm not depending on other people. That's very mature of you. Yeah, well, maturity's expensive, but it's worth it. When it was time to leave, he didn't ask when we could see each other again. He didn't push for promises or commitments. Thank you for meeting me, he said. I know you didn't have to. I wanted to. Well, I'm grateful, and I'm sorry it took losing you for me to figure out how to be grateful. Walking back to my car, I realized something important. I didn't forgive Jasper that day. Forgiveness isn't something you do in a coffee shop over a 2-hour conversation. It's something that happens slowly over time as people prove through their actions that they've actually changed. But I could see that he was trying, really trying for the first time in his life. He wasn't the same person who had let his fiancée exclude me from a wedding I'd paid for. He wasn't the scared little boy who needed his big sister to solve all his problems. He was just a man sitting across from me, finally taking responsibility for his own life. And that was enough for now. I still don't know if Jasper and I will ever have the kind of close relationship some siblings have. I still don't know if my parents will ever understand why their expectations were so unfair. I still don't know if our family will ever function in a healthy way. But I do know this: I'm not responsible for fixing any of that. I'm responsible for my own life, my own choices, my own happiness. And for the first time in 30 years, that feels like enough. Sometimes, the most loving thing you can do for someone is to stop enabling them. Sometimes, the most caring thing you can do for yourself is to walk away from people who only value what you can give them. And sometimes, the most important lesson you can learn is that you don't need anyone's permission to choose yourself. I spent $87,000 learning that lesson. It was expensive, but it was worth every penny. What do you think about Lena's choice to cancel everything? Have you ever had to set a boundary that cost you money, but saved your self-respect? Share your story in the comments below. And if you want more stories about standing up for yourself when family lets you down, hit that subscribe button. Trust me, you won't want to miss what's coming next.